We all have seen the latest version of child neglect, where a young dad or mom is sitting next to his or her kid, deeply immersed in social media and is indifferent to the needs of their little ones. When we face such scenes, we either think of it as a harmless distraction, or when we feel particularly pessimistic, we may call it a classic case of social media addiction. In fact, it's not uncommon for a highly addictive substance like methamphetamine to replace family in the hierarchy of personal priorities. That's why it's called the devil's drug. However, it is worth going beyond dopamine addiction theory and look at societal and cultural side of platforms like Instagram becoming a rival for the life of the next generation. In explaining this phenomenon, the seminal book of cultural anthropologist Ernest Becker, The Denial of Death, is especially useful. Through an insightful synthesis of some of the best ideas in psychology and philosophy, Becker concludes that the self-preservation instinct, common to all living creatures, takes an astonishingly complicated course when it comes to humans. Homo sapiens, as a species which is uniquely and painfully aware of its impermanence, and is also able to imagine endless time beyond his physical existence, has developed numerous strategies to ward off the existential dread, or as William James used to call it, the worm at the core of man's every pretension to happiness. We have developed systems of meaning like tradition, mythology, and religion to tranquilize ourselves, project our existence into the future, and find consolation for our inevitable individual annihilation. That is why we fight so ruthlessly for our ideas. When people subscribe to our idea, it is life-affirming in the most substantial sense of the word. Any rival system of meaning, for example, the creation myth or economic system of the neighboring country, means our values and systems are not universal and immortal. Becker calls these meaning-creating antidotes to death hero systems or immortality projects. Borrowing from the ideas of Otto Rank, famous psychoanalyst, Becker believes that creating art as a mode of expression is also an immortality project. If you think of it, he says, our cities and civilizations are the ultimate hero systems, castles for us to hide from the grim reaper. However, inside a city or a society, there is a hierarchical system of immortality projects. In ancient Egypt, for example, it made a lot of difference in your strategy to immortalize yourself if you were a slave or a pharaoh. For the greater part of history, reproduction was the surest way to guarantee some form of continuity. Because people were born into their gender, social class, and profession, the only way to project your person to the future was to make children. Moeller and D'Ambrosio, two philosophers in their 2021 book, You and Your Profile, call this first era the age of sincerity, where your best bet was being sincere and loyal to your predetermined role in the already established socio-biological hero system. Next comes the age of authenticity. Industrial revolution and the abundance it brought released us from the most basic biological insecurities and led to romanticism, with an emphasis on remaining true to one's mental gifts and personal creative projects. Loyalty to your family and social role came second. As a middle-class citizen in an industrialized nation, you wanted to choose your partner and your craft according to your most authentic self. In this age, you could express yourself through art much more easily compared to previous ages. You did not need a monarch as a patron to sustain yourself. And although getting immersed in an artistic trade or scientific quest does not necessarily mean neglecting children, but recent history has no shortage of such examples where children of the artist or scientist were deprived from basic parental attention, or even blamed as a distraction. Some previous hobbies took the center stage, and kids became secondary hobbies. But as civilization got increasingly sophisticated, material abundance continued, specialization and network building flourished, we stepped into another era. At this point in human history, tools of the creative trade are available to almost anyone, at least in the first world. In theory, you do not need a favorable critique in a famous literary magazine to start collecting ears for your short stories. You can make films and broadcast them with absolutely no need for a studio or a distribution company. In other words, creativity is democratized and popularized like no other time. We can debate if this has helped making original art. We all agree that more people are self-proclaimed creatives in this age than any other age in human history. Even for the mainstream businesses, image projection and online presence is the absolute priority. Behind a top-ranking business website, there might be nothing more than a few hundred professionally written articles and a single blogger. Profiles speak and profiles rule. This is the era Moeller and D'Ambrosio call the age of profilicity. Each profile is a hero system and an immortality project. Our collective creative libido and vital resources is desperately shunted to create the largest possible footprint on social media, and we have no plan B. Collective immortality projects give way to personalized ones. As Ernest Becker puts it, no society, Western or Eastern at this time in history, can provide credible values and guides on heroism for its members to follow, and as a result, the collective path to immortality is non-existent. This is not to morally judge our society, but history appears to be an account of individuation, democratization, and diversification of immortality projects. Almost all living things have only one strategy for this: proliferation, propagation, reproduction, and they bet all they have on it. Then one animal, among many, learned to build a city, erect walls around it, and elect a king. In this city, masses were still encouraged to quench their thirst for immortality by incessant reproduction and fighting neighboring hero systems. Very few people were allowed to have a tomb of their own, manipulate the value system, and declare war against rival projects. But surplus material wealth and time allowed more and more people to act like kings. We made more hero systems in the name of art. Then came the final step. We redirected resources from raising an offspring, creating original art, science, and civilization, to raising a social media page. Distraction from biological will to life may have unintended consequences. In their 2019 book, The Empty Planet, two Canadian demographers reveal surprising data that around the world, not just in the first world countries, populations are shrinking rapidly, and replacement rate is not achieved in most countries. This is a multifactorial event, but the main contributing factor is middle-class urban lifestyle. And we can argue that deeply embedded in this etiology is the value system and immortality projects we subscribe to. But it is not all doom and gloom. On the plus side, if we atomize our attention and each of us pursue immortality individually, there may be less chance of global conflict. The risk of an event like World War II is greatly diminished if we are no longer willing to subscribe to a single profile. It is kind of funny. We are so occupied with our own little immortality project that we cannot feed our children or go to war or sacrifice for any big collective cause. As they say, the world might not end with a bang, but peacefully, in a mass starvation of billions of little immortality projects because of global shortage of likers, followers, and subscribers to any heroic idea.